So most people in our industry are well aware of the dangers of static. I thought I was pretty well aware of it, but in doing research for this conversation, I was quite surprised at how low that number, the voltage number can go. Before we get into those details though, for the sake of our audience who, many of which are in this industry, some of which are kind of orbiting around this industry, not quite in it, let's give a quick tutorial, if you wouldn't mind, on electrostatic discharge.
So, electrostatics, the voltage, the charge that gets generated happens when any two materials come into contact and then separate. So you putting your foot on the floor and picking it up as you walk is a separation, and you generate a charge. Taking a sweater on, even moving in your chair, any time that happens. And the amount of charge that gets generated will depend on a lot of things. It'll depend on the materials that are touching and separating. It will depend on the humidity and other things. So we never eliminate it. Again, it's always there, but we try to minimize it. To put it in context, when you feel a shock, you're in a dry winter environment, and you feel a shock on a doorknob, that's at least 3,000 volts. That voltage that you generate just walking around in an uncontrolled winter environment it's been measured to be as high as 35,000 volts. I mean, it can get pretty high. A lot of the things that happen, to bring it over to the electronics manufacturing environment, the things that happen in that environment likewise can generate charge. People moving, packages being opened, circuits flowing through plastic tubes. All of that is, things coming into contact, separating. And those voltages can be as high if they're not controlled. Now, another point of context, and you had just mentioned, the voltage levels that can damage an exposed circuit are quite low. Many of them are under 100 volts. So you're generating, if you're in an uncontrolled situation, you could easily be generating thousands of volts. And yet the circuitry, the chips that you deal with, the devices, can be sensitive to 100 volts or less. There are many customers we have, for different reasons, they have chips or devices that are sensitive to 5 or 10 volts. So it's very, very low.
And we're not feeling 100 volts, or certainly 5 or 10 volts. We have no idea. What's the threshold for, a human awareness of static electricity? Where do we feel it?
So you feel it at around 3,000 volts, right? So you feel that shock on a doorknob. That's when you start to feel it. It gets to be painful at around 7,000 volts. You can see it right in that same range where you actually see a little spark.
So if we have 100 volts or 500 volts, 1,000 volts,
never know.
We have no idea.
Never know it. Right, yeah. So even at 1,000 volts, you can do some serious damage. We'll never know. And so that's why it's so important to control it and monitor it. There are ways to monitor it. And then the systems we put in place, we qualify those systems we qualify them at certain voltages. The flooring footwear system that you would use gets qualified to prevent or control voltage on the human body to under 100 volts, typically. I mean, again, if it's a special situation where the device is handled or ultra sensitive, you could procure a flooring footwear system that would control to less than that. We have systems that we show can control to 10 volts or 15 volts. So it just depends on the situation. So it's very, very low. It's very, very sensitive.
Thanks for listening to the Reliability Matters podcast. Join us on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month for new episodes of Reliability Matters.